Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio audio live stream. In this essay, I'm departing a little bit from the typical sort of political type fare and talking about an interview that I saw from one of the world's greatest singer-songwriters. This guy's, I think, written an incredible number of something like 10 international number one hits, 30 plus top 10 hits in addition to the number one hits and so on, and was writing producing these hits over almost non-stop over a 20-year or 15. I discovered years after they'd sort of been around, but I discovered this guy when I was a teenager and started becoming particularly interested in popular music, and I remember being sort of quite as teenagers do. You go into a swim over the songs and the music and the melodies and the lyrics. It seems like somehow the songs were talking directly to me, the lyrics were talking directly to me, identified with it and that sort of thing. So I thought, well, this guy, the wisdom that this guy has expressed in these beautiful melodies he puts together and these incredible lyrics, that wow, he must be somebody really experienced at life and a brilliant musician and all this sort of stuff. So it was interesting when I saw this by accident. It came up in a feed. I was looking for something else. Came up in the feed, and I looked at the interview, and he's like 28, 29 at the time, around that, and he's talking about his experiences thus far and what he's been doing, and he was engaged in some legal wrangles with his recording company and the management and that sort of stuff, and so he's going, and I realized what a really naive sort of guy this guy had like zero life experience. He had no concept of anything. Everything had been taken care of for him. He'd been he didn't have to make any decisions. He went straight from living with his folks to being a sort of an international rock and roll superstar type thing, and with barely anything in between. And then once he reached that, he got to that superstar, which he did from like within 2 years, not even 2 years, and then suddenly he had this army of people around him making every decision for him, and so on. So he at nearly 30, he was effectively still a child. He was still sort of 17 or 18 years old. He seemed to understand nothing of the world, and so even though by that time he was a multi-millionaire with properties all over the world and living in mansions and so on. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. How could somebody who was able to put those sort of songs and those lyrics together and be so successful, so incredibly successful at it, and still be a child at 30? That sort of threw me, and wow, I never could. I just couldn't marry the two up. So let me talk a little bit about that. Now, I went to see a concert years ago. When I was still a teenager, I went to see a concert, and I thought God had walked on the stage. I was about middle distance, and I was there in absolute thrall. And he came out and hello everybody, and he got into a song, and I was, oh wow, fuck, my hero. And look, oh, there he is. So anyway, so just having a look at this, or having examining and this interview, the guy actually couldn't read or write music, and really only had a basic understanding of a handful of guitar chords. So you couldn't have sort of imagined a less auspicious. If you'd looked and thought, well, this guy, is he going to be an one of the greatest songwriters of all time? You would have thought, not a chance, not a chance. So anyway, he was talking about writing songs because I was, oh, I don't know, a melody would just come into my head, and I'd kind of just sing it out, and I couldn't write music, so I didn't know. So then I'd kind of think of a few guitar chords to go with it, and it was all very basic. The guy just seemed to have some God-given natural talent to dream up catchy melodies, which he did. How did you write the words to this? Oh, I don't know. The words kind of just came to me, and I was just sitting down having, a cup of coffee or something, and I just thought of the words. And Now, these aren't just ordinary melodies or ordinary words. These are songs that are #1 hits, worldwide #1 hits, huge hits, massive hits. So we're talking. Somebody says, I don't know. I just, the melody just came to me. Now, if you look at the guys like the Beethovens and the Tchaikovskys and so on, how they would tear their hair out looking for inspirations. And here's this guy just melody. Melody just comes on, and he's not even a trained musician. He hasn't even got a vast repertoire of he can't play the piano. He hasn't got a vast repertoire of guitar chords or anything like that. He only plays one instrument and so on. So his only experience really is at sleazy 2-bit nightclubs doing very, very basic 3-4 chord type rock and roll stuff. So that you just no way you'd think this guy was going to get anywhere. At the time, there was a big push by record companies to find young bands, if you like, and young singers, and try and turn them into money somehow. It was very much just realizing that teenagers now had a bit of consuming power, and so why not address this market? And if the songs, the music is rubbish, who cares, as long as the kids pay for it. But a lot of the music was actually very good, and we're talking going back to really from the 60s through to probably the early 80s. There was a real excellent production, great melodies, beautifully structured songs, and so on. Anyway, this guy, so he sort of didn't really know how he was writing the song. He just tried, I don't know, melody just came to me, and the words, I don't know, they just sort of happened, and so this was how he. And he gave an example of a song that he busted his ass over that didn't actually do that well. I mean, it did okay, but it wasn't a hit. And all the big hits he had were, I was driving along and a melody just came to my head. Those were all his big hits. Were just out of the blue, a melody would come into his head, words would come into his head. And there are a few songs that he really worked seriously hard on, crafting it and so on years later, and they never did that well. So it's an interesting sort of thing here. Now, another thing too is what got me was how the people around him were, the arrangers, song arrangers, the producers, the people arranging for orchestration, and the overall production crew, sound engineers, those sorts of things. There were quite a lot of high-powered people. And so you got this guy that can't read or write music, barely knows a few guitar chords, who's writing these super successful international hits. Now, he would have the kernel of a song, what the idea of it, and maybe 1 or 2 verses, or maybe, just a bit of a melody, and he sort of hums along to it. And then the team, the sound engineer, the arranging team, quite a substantial team of well-paid professional musicians, some of whom can play multiple instruments and are experts in the field of music, and guys that are so good with music they can just listen to him humming a few bars of the song, and they can write up the music, and the bass clef, treble clef, and all the production work that goes into it. So the guy was really a catalyst for a process. So he would come in, I got this tune in my head, and then suddenly all the professionals would come in and turn it into a well-produced, tightly arranged, with orchestration and multiple instruments, and it would turn it into a totally arranged work and production. So nonetheless, he appears as the singer, player, even on some of them, songwriter. So he went from, in 22 years old, he was just some penniless guy, living in his folks' basement effectively. By 24, he was a multi-millionaire and was buying mansions with that money. Not so much from the playing and the singing, but the songwriting was the royalties from songwriting, especially when you've got successful songs. Now bear in mind he's writing songs that are selling multiple millions. Even today, some of these songs are producing $1 million a year plus in royalties. I mean, that gives you an idea as to the songs are being still sung and played and copied and covered by numerous artists many years after the fact. Now, so what was this guy's talent? I mean, he had a nice enough singing voice, but what was his talent that somehow catchy melodies would just come into his head? That was it. That was his talent. And beyond that, it was sort of, again, words would just come into his head. And the words that captivated me when I first heard them, he was, well, how did you write the lyrics to this? Oh, I don't know, they just came into my head. So it's someone who's just got some sort of incredible natural talent that he himself doesn't even understand. And he was pressed on the interview, but how did you write this song? That's got beautiful sort of harmonies and melody. That's like, wow, that's a, oh, I don't know, it just came. I just realized that if I just came. I just realized that if I did this, I just and that and da da da. The guy had no idea how he did it. It was just a shoulder shrug. It wasn't like the writing of a concerto where the composer sits down and busting his ass for months or years to produce this incredible great work. This was something that just came into his head, and yet again was a multi-million unit seller, which turned into a very, very rich man, very quickly. Anyway, it came to the point where he had no understanding of finances at all, none, zip. I mean, I don't know if the guy could count more than even count to 10. You sort of get the impression that he was he's not financially literate even in the slightest. And he was sort of committed to working, and he had a contract with the recording company where he had to write so many songs a year or something like that. So he did treat that quite seriously, that he had to live up to his obligations on the contract. But he was a very rich guy, but all his money was controlled by the management of the recording company. They gave him an allowance. Where do you want to buy a house? Here. Someone would make all the arrangements to buy the house, and he would be allowed to come and inspect it and say, yeah, I'm okay with that. Okay, we'll buy that for you. And there'd be tax advised to say, well, you have to spend this much money on this and that because it's tax advantageous. And okay. So he actually knew nothing about money, and Faye just given an allowance. The money was always there, and he could say, well, I want to buy this, and they go, okay, there's the money for that, or someone would go and buy it for him and bring it over to him, and the list went on. So he actually didn't make any decisions, and admitted to himself he couldn't make decisions. He couldn't make a decision over what to eat for dinner that night. It was that sort of complicated. So they appointed like a full-time minder, or a couple of minders to him. So he would say, well, I feel like I want some cocaine tonight to snort. Okay, done. Somebody would go out and arrange it. I want a couple of hookers to come out. Done. Okay, fixed. So he didn't make any decisions about anything. So when he fell into a contractual dispute with his management company and with the recording company, while the matter was being sorted out through the courts, they froze all his assets, including his house. And so he found himself, this guy, on the street with no money, even though he was a rich man. He couldn't get at any of it. Now you think somebody would have advised him, well, you need to get out some cash because this legal thing could go on for quite a while, so you need to have access to it or make this as part of the deal with the the legal teams, that you have access to a certain amount of spending money and living money, all this sort of thing. And it was even where he got kicked out of his own mansions during these legal disputes. So and he was quite bewildered by this. Oh, I didn't know. I just, the money just always, whatever money I needed just magically appeared. I don't know how it did, but it did. And then, when we were doing all this legal stuff, I couldn't get hold of the money, and I had to, I had to rely on my girlfriend's money. And just listening to the guy, he was like this bewildered child, sort of wandering around in the dark. And how could somebody who'd written that many hits, was so famous, was so in the media all the time, was so rich and so accomplished from a musical point of view, at least, how could they be this naive and this simple and this childlike? Oh, I don't know where the money came from. It just did. I mean, fuck. But when you've got, these people running around doing everything for you, and I suppose it's understandable from the point of the record companies and the management saying, look, this guy is a prolific, prodigious songwriter. And I suppose it's understandable from the point of the record companies and the management saying, look, this guy is a prolific, prodigious songwriter. We don't want him to have any distractions. We don't want him to have to worry about anything. We'll take care of everything. So all he does is sit down and write songs because that's making us all rich. That's what we want him to fucking do. And so I think that was probably a view that they took. And so they wanted to keep him not so much in a childlike state necessarily, because that was a byproduct of it. They wanted to keep him isolated from all worries and cares, all realities, just so he could concentrate on writing songs, which he did and did very well. And again, made all those around him very rich. One of the recording engineers, quite a very accomplished one. I mean, he was an impresario. He played multiple instruments and so on. He was one of the he could turn a song kernel into a fully, produced, 100% produced hit record. So he was, clearly worth his money. He became a millionaire out of the process, a multimillionaire out of the process, and quite famous in his own right, even though he was this nobody sound engineer, deep in the bowels of a recording studio. He was the right guy for them. He was the one who could look at a tune or the embryo of a song and go, I can make a hit out of that. And you add the arrangements and all the other bits to it. But it was interesting to see that somebody can be that accomplished, that incredibly accomplished, and still be in effect, a naive, bewildered child outside of their narrow area of expertise. In this case, singing and songwriting. It blew me away that this guy who'd been writing lyrics, I thought, he's talking to me directly, as I was like 13 or something, and that I identified with and listened to these songs over and over again and wore out the records and so on. That really, this guy didn't have a fucking clue. And, oh, well, at least it was, given I was 13, it was the blind leading the blind, I suppose. You've been a Tassus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.